Welcome to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison.
I'm Molly, a former skeptic turned full-time energy healer and teacher.
And I'm Madison, a born and raised witch running my family's crystal shop.
And we're here to explore all things woo through the lens of both science and spirituality so that you can find the moments of magic in your everyday life and create an intentional spiritual practice.
So if that's what you're into, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's demystify some magic. Howdy doody, friends.
Howdy doody.
We've made it. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. And I'm going to stop you right now. If you saw the title of this episode and you're new to this podcast, or you're a longtime listener and you've maybe been slacking on your listening and you saw the title of this episode and you thought, oh, great, what a great place to jump back in. I'm going to tell you to press pause right now. You're going to let me finish this, but then after you're going to press pause and you're going to go right to the root.
Yep.
We will have no skipping to the third eye.
No
right.
skipping.
I'm going to gentle parent you and say, hey, buddy, we got to work on our root. We got to eat our vegetables before we can have ice cream.
We eat the cake.
So I'm going to tell you to go back to the root, press pause. Love you. We'll miss you. We'll see you in a second. And we'll talk after you listen to the root. Thank you. Okay. Now that it's just us.
No, it's just us.
I'm excited to talk about the third eye.
Me too. We're going to have some fun, especially now that we're all grounded in our root.
Exactly.
It's going to make it so much easier.
How much better is it going to feel as we work on our third eye, knowing that we have a strong, solid foundation underneath us to keep us safe?
Yeah. It's just going to open so much faster.
But
so
first, before we get into all that, Molly, what was your magic moment this week?
My magic moment was, okay, so I have, this is a sad magic moment that has a happy ending.
A tragic moment?
A tragic moment. Oh, she got me.
I've been hanging on to that one for a minute.
Yeah, I bet. So when my husband and I got married, our wedding was themed around blue hydrangeas because they're my favorite color. I believed that, you know, all of the blue hydrangeas had helped me manifest my house. That's a story for another time. But just before we got married, my maid of honor bought me 2 blue hydrangea bushes for the front of our house that we just bought.
That's really sweet.
And so sweet, so cute. And they've been thriving. They've been living the dream. They've been thriving. I don't know the first thing about plant care, okay? I don't know the first thing about taking care of a bush, but they've survived. Last year, my dear, dear, dear husband, I love him. I promise I love him. He thought he was doing me a solid last fall, and he cut back the hydrangeas.
No.
Which you're not supposed to do. He cut them all the way to the ground. And so this whole year, we've been like, are they going to come back? I know. I know. I was like, you can't give Madison shit for ruining Christmas if you ruin my hydrangeas.
It's so true.
And so
don't worry, Justin. I'll buy her new hydrangea bushes.
Well, I don't know if we need to because they have grown back bigger and better than ever. However, they're not blooming this year. So they're just like a beautiful green bush, which I love hydrangea leaves. I think they're beautiful, but they are not blooming. And so my maid of honor on Friday, we were going to go to the beach and she was like, how are your hydrangeas doing? Like the ones in my neighborhood there's more blooms than ever. And I was like, funny story, actually. There's no blooms. And so she came to my house. We were going to drive to the beach, and she brought me a vase of blue hydrangea flowers.
That's so sweet.
Like, you're so nice. So now I have blue hydrangeas on my kitchen table, and I was so happy.
That's very tender. I love that.
So tender. What was your magic moment?
My magic moment is friend of the podcast. You know him, you love him, Anthony. Manager at Spellcrafter. It was his birthday last week, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do for his birthday because we knew we were going to, like get together, us at the store, and do something. And he told me, this is part 1 of a magic moment. All he wanted to do was have a lock-in at the store. And so we were going to bring blow-up mattresses and like after we close, stay overnight and, you know,
Cute.
play with our divination stuff.
Oh.
I have an old Ouija board, you know, go old school slumber party vibes. And so we were going to do it the Saturday before his birthday. And that was my first fully booked day of readings. And so that morning of, this is the true magic moment. The first magic moment is that Anthony loves his job and we all love each other so much that we were going to sleep at the store. That's like part one.
Have you fixed the AC
That makes
yet?
me so happy. Yes.
Okay, good.
Everything's fine with the AC.
I was going to say, that's true commitment.
It's a crisp 72 in there if we want it to be. So that's part one of the magic moment is like, oh, I love you. You are such a good friend to me. And we're going to have a slumber party in the store. Part two is that Saturday morning when I had 7 readings back to back to back, Anthony looked at me and he said, I think we should plan this for another day.
Yeah, and make it a day that I can come.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
That would be so fun. Slumber party.
Oh my God.
And so just a 2-part of like, oh, I love the people in my life who, one, love the store as much as I do and like want to be a part of it and care about it so much in the same way that I do that we're like, yeah, we'll sleep in this place. And then 2, on the other side of that, to be like, I think that we could do this with better timing so that everybody has a good time. And so we went out to dinner instead and it was great. But I feel very grateful.
I want to go. That sounds so fun.
Okay. Next time you're here, we'll have a slumber party.
Fuck yeah. I had a slumber party once when I was a kid at the Children's Museum of Maine. Oh, it's like
so good.
Such a solid memory. That was my first act of manifestation because there was a mini grocery store inside, and I loved being a cashier. And then my first job, my first like real job, I was cashier, and I was the service star of the month once. Do you have
Astro Skate?
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, it's just a roller skating rink.
No, we have Happy Wheels.
Wow. Do they have lock-ins? That's what they would do at Astro Skate is they would have slumber parties at this, which is the worst place to have a slumber party.
Awful. That sounds stinky.
It's just a room.
Stinky.
It's just a room full of shoes.
No. Immediately no. That sounds awful.
Yeah, I would prefer the Children's Museum of Maine. You think we can do it there? You think we can, is that allowed?
Okay, so here's the thing, is they renovated it recently and it doesn't have the same, it doesn't give the same as the old historic building did. I'm sorry to anyone.
No one wants us to have joy anymore.
In Maine who, they want to tear down the old building. I'm like, no.
That's where I was a cashier.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Also learned how to milk a cow there.
A wide variety of skills.
Acquired. It doesn't hit the same now. I don't know if it's because I'm 32 or because the building is newer, but I did go.
Could go either way. All right, let's get into the third eye.
Let's do it. Let's talk about
Let's give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want. So, third eye is located in the space between your eyebrows. So it is. There's a little bit of controversy about what corresponds with the third eye versus what corresponds with the crown. But my thing is they're so close together and they're so connected. Who the fuck cares? All right. But if we're talking about endocrine glands and the connection between there, the third eye is, in my opinion, corresponds much more closely with the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is this small cone-shaped gland in the middle of your brain. It's part of your endocrine system. It's responsible for producing melatonin, right, which we know is important for sleep, for regulation of stress, among other things. The pineal gland's also responsible for our circadian rhythm, so that rhythm of like when we sleep, when we feel sleepy, when we're awake, because it corresponds with something to do with like the way that light is interpreted in the brain. Because light is like, how our brain knows what time it is and whether we're supposed to be asleep or awake. That's why blue light can fuck up your sleep cycle. It's also connected to our immune system. So the pineal gland plays a function in that, as well as regulating the other endocrine functions, regulating stress, mood, our sex hormones. It really plays a part in a lot of different things. And we can think of the third eye as like playing a role in a lot of different functions in our body. So it's very connected to our nervous system response, but not in the same way that the root is. The pineal gland and the third eye, especially, the third eye is so connected to our sense of perspective. So think about the last thing that stressed you the hell out, right? Was it actually a life or death situation, or were you just so narrowed in on it that you couldn't see alternatives? And that's really what the third eye is. When it's in balance, it's like we can step back and see the greater picture that is our life, our interconnectedness with each other, our sense of right versus wrong, our sense of what's reality versus what is our anxiety talking to us. But when our third eye is out of balance, it's like we get tunnel vision. And that's what anxiety causes us to do, right? We've talked about the tiger brain ad nauseum on this podcast, but I will not shut up about it because your brain doesn't know the difference between your anxiety and a tiger chasing you. And so if there was actually a tiger here and now in the room with us, all you would be focused on is that tiger. You would get tunnel vision on it because your brain is wired towards survival. And so the third eye, when we are in that stress response, when we experience anxiety, it gets tunnel vision on that anxiety. And a balanced third eye is able to step back and look at the broader picture, look at all the options that are in front of you. And that's how we get connected to the intuition, to our inner wisdom, right? Our intuition is that part of us that says, okay, this looks bad, but what are the alternatives? What are the options? Where's this leading me to? Where can I find a sense of trust? So it's like the root is connected to our nervous system in that sense of like, I need to feel safe and secure. And the third eye is connected to our nervous system in that sense of like, I need to be able to see all the options here. I need to be able to see beyond this tunnel vision.
Yeah.
So if you are experiencing an imbalance in the third eye, that can show up as like excessive worry, anxiety, that tunnel vision, but it can also show up as disturbances in your sleep. So think about like how our brain won't shut up at night. So it keeps going and going and going and going. And again, that third eye is connected with the pineal gland, which is connected to melatonin, our sleep-wake cycle. So all those things affect each other. It can also show up as headaches, tension in the eyes, blurry vision without like, a medical diagnosis behind it. As someone who may or may not need glasses, I'm not
as we came to that.
I'm not blaming my third eye on that.
There was a moment where I thought she was gonna, where when we're feeling really resistant to reality of the situation.
Okay, what happened was I've been doing a lot of reading, and I also just got a bigger TV, and I texted Madison, and I was like, why do my eyes hurt? Why do I have a headache? And then I sat closer to the TV, and I went, oh, the words aren't as blurry as they were from back there. So,
yep. Something else, going back to what you're saying about like the needing to see all sides, another sign of an imbalance in the third eye can be a level of like hypervigilance.
Yes.
Of I need to be looking at all sides all the time, and I need to have access to all options.
Yeah. And on the other hand, deceit. Like being easily deceived or deceiving others, right? Pulling the wool over their eyes is often a saying, like not being truthful with your perspective or your presentation of the situation at hand.
And I don't know how to word this, but I think there also can be a level of like using your intuition as a scapegoat.
Yes. Spiritual bypassing, I think, is very much a sign of third eye imbalance. We've talked about spiritual bypassing before, but basically like if I were to be like, oh, my eyes hurt every time I read, must be my third eye, and not be like,
I must be accessing my third eye when I'm reading.
Yeah, and not acknowledge the fact that like I'm 32 and probably need glasses and haven't been to the eye doctor since before COVID. Like that spiritual bypassing is so often like pulling the wool over your own third eye.
Big time.
Big time. Big time.
So if you're looking to use color magic to work with your third eye, the color that's associated with it is kind of what we in the biz call blurple, a nice blue purple.
An indigo.
We might also say indigo, but some of us prefer blurple.
Blurple.
And if you're looking to do some sound healing with your third eye, you're going to want to Google 852 hertz.
And the seed sound is Om. O-M.
Om.
Yeah. Om is a really cool, like, I know a lot of times it's sort of used in joking ways about like spiritual people or yoga or whatever, but it's actually a really beautiful sound. It essentially represents the interconnectedness of all beings. And so that's really like, and it's interesting because the seed sound is the same for the third eye and the crown. Like I said, they're so interconnected. And really, I think a lot of our trust and our intuition, our ability to see perspectives is to be able to reconnect with that interconnectedness, right? Like you and I are not separate. We're all just doing our best. And so if we can approach situations with that awareness and that understanding that like your anger is my anger, your joy is my joy, and vice versa, then I think that helps sort of step out of that loop of anxiety and step into that more trusting, intuitive voice that's within us.
Yeah, and that's why we've been harping so hard on the fact that all of the chakras are so interconnected because it starts within us.
Yeah, and I want to dispel a couple myths. Can I do some myth busting?
Let's do it. Let's bust those myths.
Okay, so the first one, I didn't even write this one down, but I hear in spiritual spaces people say that if you take medicine, it will calcify your pineal gland and you'll never tap into your intuition. And if you've listened to this pod for any length of time, you know that we think that is fucking bullshit. We are big advocates for medicating when you need to be medicated. And it will not fuck with your intuition. I'll tell you, like, I have never felt more intuitive than when my Prozac prescription dosage was corrected because my anxiety, my OCD was so fucking loud. I could not access my intuition no matter what. Like, I literally had circuits in my brain that were telling me I was going to die every time I left my house. So how could I possibly connect with my intuition when there's a bullhorn screaming at me just for walking out my front door? It's not like I needed to quiet that voice. And so taking medication, it's not going to block you from your intuition, right? It's, if anything, someone telling you not to take medication because it will block their intuition, their pineal gland is fucked. That's that spiritual bypassing that we're talking about. Like, if you can't see that in order for my root to stabilize, I need to be on this prescription. If you can't see that, whether it's for mental health prescriptions or chronic pain or whatever treatment plan you are on from your doctor, if you can't see that, that is a third eye imbalance.
And even if that were the case, even if your third eye was obstructed by the use of medication, your third eye is not necessary for life. Psychic abilities are not necessary for life. Some things are.
Yeah.
If you take a medication that stabilizes you mentally, I would give I would give up my psychic abilities for my ADHD medication.
Yeah. And I will
in a heartbeat.
I will say too, like, if someone is unmedicated and they do have some sort of mental health need for medication, sometimes it's a very thin line between psychoses and psychic.
Yeah.
Right? And so it can be even harder to differentiate what's truly your intuition and what is, the imbalance in your brain when you're unmedicated in some way, shape, or form.
100%.
Hundo P. That's our first myth we're going to dispel. The second myth we're going to dispel, I used to hear this a lot more on TikTok. I haven't heard it much recently, but I'm going to wipe the slate just in case anyone's worried about this. You have nothing to fear about opening your third eye. I used to hear this fear a lot of people thinking they were going to open their third eye too fast and then let in demons or shadow creatures or scary things. Your third eye is only going to open to the extent that your root is grounded. And so it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm scared to open my third eye. Great, work on your root.
Yeah.
Right? Work on that fear. Work on that fear that lives in the root. Once that fear goes away, the third eye is going to open. You're going to see there's nothing to fear. But if you're really scared of it, go back to the root. The other thing too is that working on your third eye doesn't necessarily invite in you seeing more, right? We've talked about this in the Claire episodes. Not everyone is visual, but it's definitely not just like a one-way ticket to inviting things that are scary in, right? Like it's not like, oh, I'm going to open my third eye to generate nightmares. No, it's like you're going to work on your third eye, bring it into balance so that you can see the broader perspective, so that you can see more of what your intuition wants to show you. That shouldn't be scary. That shouldn't be scary. If it's scary, right? We talked about in our intuition versus anxiety episode, scary, fear is much more aligned with anxiety than it is intuition.
Yeah. And I don't know if you'll resonate with this as much, but I find that something that I had to do was kind of alter my language a little bit, that I don't always even use open and closed.
Yeah, I don't either.
For my third eye. I see it visually as more of like, sometimes it's got its eye mask on. You know, like literally a little sleep mask. Mm-hmm. And it's more about like removing something that I've placed there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that gives it a little bit more, like I see often with the verbiage of opening and closing, it's like this thing that happens that I have no control over.
Yeah.
Or that it's a thing that once it's done, it can't be undone.
Yeah.
And I don't find that to be super helpful. So, you know, sometimes you just take your little sleep mask off of your third eye.
Yeah. And also a reminder that like you are the authority of your intuition. Mm-hmm. You are not the authority always of your anxiety, or at least it doesn't feel that way. You are the authority of your anxiety. It just doesn't feel that way. So if you feel like you're seeing things that are scary and you have no control over it, that's an anxious response versus an intuitive response. An intuitive response, if it shows you something that brings in fear, you can simply say, please show me in another way, and it will switch. If it continues, that's an anxiety.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are our myths. We've dispelled them.
Those are our myths. Congrats. They're gone forever. Whee! Let's get into some low effort rituals.
Okay. Let's do it.
First, the lowest of low effort rituals is to go back and listen to our series on the clear senses.
Mm-hmm. Maybe starting with that anxiety versus intuition episode.
Yes, 100%. And then learn a little bit more about each of the clairs, see what resonates with you, and maybe even use some of those low effort rituals that we gave in those episodes on how to develop those clairs.
Yeah. I think so much of the third eye and working with the third eye is working with discernment. And we often hear that word in spiritual spaces, but we don't always demystify it. So to me, discernment is all about like taking in the information and taking a breath before deciding what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
Rather than just like going for the habitual wiring of my brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even taking a breath and taking a beat before I decide what it means.
Yeah. If it means anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not even just like in spiritual spaces, right? If you've ever, we talked about this in one of our, I think our heart episode, but when you get an email or a text message and your initial response is like, oh, what the fuck? Why would they say that to me? Taking a breath, zooming out of that tunnel vision and going, what other possibilities are there? What could this mean? How would I like to respond rather than how would my anger like to respond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you struggle with that, therapy can be helpful. Can help you see different perspectives. I think therapy is a third eye practice.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And I know it's not accessible to everyone, but if it is accessible to you, it can be a really powerful practice for beginning that discernment work and beginning that work into understanding the voice in your brain versus the voice of your intuition.
Mm-hmm. Another way to see that voice of your intuition is by just daydreaming.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great practice for really, I think where we struggle the most, at least the people that I know and the people that I see, struggle the most in really being able to, like, I don't even really know that I know how to word this, but opening up to a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And opening up to a world where there are no rules. I think that's why we're going to talk a little bit about divination later, but I think that's why so many people are drawn to tarot as a form of divination, because there is a right answer.
Oh, interesting.
And when we daydream, when we take out all of the rule books for even our way of thought, that's a really great way to get into that brain space of allowing things to come in rather than seeking what something means, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I was just thinking as you were saying, like, world building could be really
exactly.
powerful, like third eye.
Playing The Sims.
Yeah, playing The
The
Sims.
Sims.
Reading fantasy books and not looking at the map.
Mm-hmm.
Me.
Yeah, I love that.
I never look at the map.
Never, ever, ever.
On my Kindle, it's like this big.
Listen.
Listen.
I don't need to know where things
I'm
are.
not going to memorize that map. Are you kidding me?
There's no test at the end.
Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like would be a really powerful third eye practice.
Yes.
Any of those like role play games.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. That's a great one.
Also, okay, all right. Wait, hold on. One of my friends, she's a big Dungeons and Dragons person, and she's also like a little witchy and woo. I think she might listen to the podcast. So if it's you, let me know. But she put in her Instagram stories, it's a full moon, charge your D&D dice. I was like, whoa, I never thought to do that.
That's so fun.
I've never played D&D,
love that.
but I've played other role-play games, and they're very fun.
Me either. My ex played it, so I hosted D&D.
Oh.
But I was not allowed to join.
Rude. We should play D&D. When we sleep over at Spellcrafter.
We'll play. Perfect.
Perfect. Another one is meditation and also Reiki, or like any form of energy healing, I think is really powerful for third eye. Reiki in particular, because it has that attunement part of the practice, which is essentially like using Reiki to connect you with the divine or connect you with that interconnectedness. I hear from so many of my students, they thought they weren't visual people, and then they developed visual intuition after their attunement. That happened with me. And I also think Reiki as like a broader scope, like even outside of the energy healing part, the whole premise of Reiki is interconnectedness. Like that is when we teach, about the principles of just for today I will not worry, just for today I will not anger, just for today I will be grateful, just for today I will be honest, just for today I will be kind. That is all about separating from our ego and seeing that we are one, right? We are one light in multiple bodies. I think for me, Reiki has been, just walking the path of Reiki has been such a powerful practice of seeing the broader picture and seeing that I'm not separate from other people, and being able to use those principles as a way of like walking myself back home to my intuition. And I just think like, I don't know, I geek out about this all the time with my students, but I have taken many Reiki trainings in my life just because I like to learn different perspectives, and some of them focus on this more than others. It's like the crutch of my entire training program is like, we are all one. You're in the driver's seat here.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful practice at learning to trust your intuition.
Yeah. Something else that Reiki is really good for is as a form of energetic cleansing, specifically for the third eye. I feel like for me, the third eye is where I get all gunked up energetically. And I think that's because there's like a lot of ego involved.
Yeah.
Oftentimes with the third eye, that it just gets, I spend more time cleansing that part of my body than anywhere else.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
And so either using Reiki, smoke, water, even like doing that in the shower.
Steaming your face, ice rolling your face with the intention of cleansing. Another practice, which is kind of a weird, I don't know if you can do this in Florida, but tell me if you can, is to hunt for pine cones, because the pineal gland is like shaped like a pine cone. So the symbolism of a pine cone is so connected with your intuition. And if you've ever seen like a pine cone that's very tight versus one that's very open, what I like to do is go hunting for tiny pine cones and then lie down in meditation with a tiny pine cone on my forehead.
I'm going to be really honest and tell you that I had to Google if we have pine cones in Florida.
Do you?
We do.
Okay. Go on the hunt.
I will. And then going back to what I was saying earlier about tarot, finding new forms of divination practices and exploring those is like a top tier third eye practice. And I specifically want you to leave the cards out of this one. Or if you are going to use the cards, don't touch a guidebook.
Yeah.
Forms of divination like scrying is
Can you explain scrying?
So it's often done in water, fire, or like a crystal ball, but it's gazing. So with a crystal ball, what you'll see is someone will usually put like a candle, like a flame behind the crystal to use that to illuminate. And then you soften your gaze as you look at the crystal ball and describe what you see, basically. And if you've never done it before, it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because there are no rules. And it is entirely what symbolism means to you. And this is why it's such a powerful practice, because it's all about forming those connections.
That feels like a divination 201. If you want a divination 101, cloud gazing.
Ooh, yeah.
Same thing, different tools.
Or if you like using oracle or tarot cards, using them, but specifically analyzing what the, like, if you know a lot about what the symbolism means in the cards based on the guidebook, do a reading entirely based on what those symbols mean to you, what those symbols elicit in you.
Yeah. I love that. Or like working with your pendulum, right? Like that could be a really powerful tool. I will often, my energy cleansing practice that I love for the third eye is to hold the pendulum after it's been cleansed, ask, show me balanced and show me unbalanced.
Ooh,
instead of balanced, instead of yes and no. And then lay with it over my forehead and just wait until it goes into balance.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah. I love that.
You can do that for all your chakras, but I really like it for the third eye, especially.
Yeah. But I think with the third eye, it really is an area where I would encourage you to push just a little bit, because there are no consequences of like quote unquote being wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so if you've done the work on those lower chakras, you have the security, you have the safety, you have the stability. There's nothing that can go wrong by trying out a new divination practice and having no idea what the reading means.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you get better.
Throw some bones, throw some runes.
Yes, like, and just see what comes up and write it down and journal about it and see what happens.
I'm like, what are the others? Yeah, doing one that you have no idea about. Like, I couldn't tell you the first thing about runes. Don't know. Maybe that's my third eye practice.
Maybe. It's a really freeing way to work.
My third eye practice that I did over the weekend was I made a bunch of ritual baths, and I just pulled herbs from my cabinet based purely on my intuition. So I was like, okay, my intention is restful sleep. Just grab whichever one's called to me. And I was like, some of them, I didn't even know what the fuck they were. And I looked them up after, and I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But just trusting that innate wisdom rather than being like, oh, I have to look this up on the book and make sure that it's right. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
And I think even giving yourself permission to not look it up after.
Yeah. And if you want to work with some crystals, we have 3 recommendations for you. If you're not sure what to do with these crystals, you can just lie down and place them on your forehead. These are ones that are really powerful for that. Or you can keep them on your desk or hold on to them in meditation. Hold on to them while you daydream, while you work on your clairs, etc. Fluorite, really good for quieting the mind, clearing the clutter. Think of it like a vacuum cleaner or like a leaf blower for your brain. Sodalite, really good for starting to trust your intuition, starting to clear some of those more rambunctious thoughts that won't go away, breaking cycles there. And then amethyst, really good for breaking the habit of thinking. So amethyst is so interesting. I got to do a video on like the history of amethyst, but the word actually comes from, I think it was the Greek word for not drunk. And the belief back then was that if you put amethyst in a goblet of wine, you wouldn't get drunk. And that, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And then eventually they started using amethyst to break addiction, to help support people when they're going through withdrawals and detoxes and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And so now we think of amethyst so much more for the mind and relaxation. And if we look back at the history where that came from, is it breaks the addiction of thinking, breaks the addiction of negative thinking, breaks the addiction of anxiety. So it can help you see more clearly when you're going down that spiral versus when your intuition is nudging you.
Yeah. A crystal that I actually just remembered this. I have this very perfectly like circular disc shaped piece of lepidolite
that one's good too.
That I love to place on my third eye.
Yeah. Lepidolite has lithium in it. And so like if we know anything about lithium, it's used for a lot of like medications that help the brain stabilize. So that's another good one too. I love the history of crystals because it helps me make sense of why they do what they do.
Yeah. All right. And then for herbs, we have lemon balm, mugwort, star anise, and lavender.
Cute.
And that's the third eye.
The third eye.
I'm waiting for it.
It's just a semi-charmed life here in.
You didn't even. It's a semi-charmed kind of life.
No, it is semi-charmed life.
Whatever.
Do 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 do
Do do do do do do do do.
I wish you would step back from that lid,
my friend. Anyways, Third Eye Blind cover band coming to a dive bar near you.
Third Eye Unblind. Third Eye Balanced is
that's our cover band. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison. If you want to learn more about us, you can find all our links in the show notes.
We'd love to know what you think of today's episode, so drop us a review or give us a shout out on social media. And don't forget to let us know your magical moment of the week. Okay, love you. Bye.